Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So today I'm in a Toyota GT86. Now I bought this car a couple of days ago and I was really excited to go and drive it. It's the first one I've ever owned, well it's the first one I've ever driven in fact. They've got such great reviews and I think they look wicked. It's sort of like a shrunken Nissan GTR. I'd always heard that they were such a driver-focused traditional sports car with the engine in the front and the drive at the back that I was desperate to get behind the wheel. So I went to the main dealer where it had arrived in part exchange, and it was sort of rush hour, a miserable wet evening, and well, I was very disappointed with it, to be honest. I drove it back in stop-start traffic with the wipers on full, and I just couldn't believe how boring it was. It felt kind of sluggish, the ride was firm, it's automatic for a start. I was really disappointed with it. It felt like an automatic Corolla, but with a stiffer ride. At that point, I thought it was the most overrated car I'd ever driven. How could all these people be so wrong about it? And I thought that was the end of the story, but I thought I better give this car the benefit of the doubt. All these people can't be wrong. So I thought I'd take it for a good old drive on the weekend and see if I could change my mind about it. Anyway, I have. Completely. I've totally changed my mind on it. Around town, it may be boring and slow and uncomfortable. When you start opening this car up and playing around with it, it's a completely different beast. If I put my foot down now on the bypass, it has nearly 200 horsepower, but trust me, that figure is irrelevant because this car is all about the way it handles rather than how much power's under the bonnet. You don't get much grip from the skinny tyres at the back, so you can always get some wheel spin and you can always flick the tail out, even with an automatic. It's very balanced through corners too. As you drive it more and more, you really start to appreciate the effort that's gone into making this car, because I don't think I've ever felt more connected to a car whilst driving it than with this. It feels made for the driver. The passengers don't really get a look in, which is handy because there's not really much room for passengers. Not unless you've got a couple of friends with no legs, no arms, no head either really. The steering is so precise and responsive, it's unlike anything else I've driven. It just responds to even the slightest of corrections. You feel totally connected. The slightest input from the driver has an immediate effect. It's almost like driving a forklift truck. The engine is a flat 4 Subaru Boxer engine, which revs up to 9,000 RPM, and you have to really rev it to get anything out of it. Below 4,000 RPM it just feels lethargic. Between 4,000 and 7,000 RPM is where the magic happens. It's quite audible actually. You do hear a lot of engine noise, and I'm not a huge fan of the Boxer engine. It just always reminds me of Imprezas being driven around the States. But to be honest, it all adds to the drama of this little sports car. The seats are supportive and firm, and they grip you in at the sides, but they're never uncomfortable. You might struggle if you're 30 stone, but for anybody sort of average sized, I think you'll be fine. But again, through these seats, you can feel what's going on. It's weird, you just feel completely connected. The driving position is perfect. The steering wheel's at 90 degrees. Everything feels driver orientated. It actually feels like you're driving a race car simulator at an arcade. I think it looks fantastic. It looks like a car you'd see on Gran Turismo or, another one of those PlayStation games. Make sure you get one though with a rear spoiler. I'm not talking in terms of aerodynamics or downforce. I just think they look cool. If you ever see one without a rear spoiler, they just look unfinished and a bit weird. I like how the roof has 2 scoops in it, which gives the driver and passenger more headroom. I love the front end, it looks angry and menacing, and I love the daytime running lights, the LEDs, they look great. The 17-inch wheels look nice too. The inside feels well built and solid, but it doesn't feel special or especially modern like the new generation TT. You won't be bowled over by the interior, but I guarantee it will last. You get a USB and an auxiliary point down here, which is a must. You get a couple of cup holders, loads of little storage areas, another bottle holder here in the door card and the passenger door card too. The Jbl Sound System is very good too. This one's got sat nav, and you can play your music through the Bluetooth, which is very good, and it's dead easy to connect too. I like the red contrast stitching as well on the steering wheel and on any bits of leather trim. All adds to its sort of sporty feel. I also like the automatic gear lever because at quick glance it looks like a manual. I like the climate buttons, which are made to look like a bolt head. You won't have to remortgage your house to do the servicing on it either. I called Toyota the other day and they quoted me £200 for an interim service, which I thought was quite reasonable. Running costs are quite low. Road tax here in the UK for an automatic model is only £200 a year. It's slightly less for a manual. If you drive it like a member of the WI, you'll get 35 miles per gallon from it. If you drive it like you stole it, you'll average 25 miles per gallon. But still, that's not a figure that'll break the bank. It shares its tyres with the Prius, so they're quite cheap to replace. There are a couple of negative things to report. It never really feels as quick as it looks. It does get a move on, but it never pins you into your seat. It's fun to drive because of the way it handles and the lack of grip. They've got the lack of grip just right. Anything less and it would just be a death trap. They've got the balance perfect. It feels so poised and agile. Not that I'm some expert or anything, and I know millions of dollars have been spent on R&D, but I just feel like this car would have benefited more from Toyota's VVT-i engine and perhaps a turbo, rather than Subaru's Boxer unit. But anyway, that's just my opinion. You do need to really work this engine hard before it starts to reward you. You might, like I did, dismiss the automatic straight away, but don't be so hasty, because this is one of the best conventional automatics I've ever driven. The changes are immediate, and you also can change with these paddle shifters behind the steering wheel too. So it's a very good gearbox, this. I don't like the controls for the audio. They're too small and fiddly. And even with my small hands, you'll struggle to tune the radio in or adjust the volume. And because it's so driver focused, there are no audio controls on the steering wheel. So you have to reach over and adjust them like that. They're just too small and fiddly to use whilst you're driving. The boot's quite small too. I know what you're going to say, it's a sports car, so you wouldn't expect a huge boot. But in something like the TT, where the whole hatch lifts up, you do get lots of room. And in this, you don't. You can pick them up in the UK from around £10,000, so it is a very appealing proposition. For one like this, with lower miles and full Toyota service history, I expect to spend around £12,000. I'd much rather have one than a hot hatch. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video with a new shape Audi TT, and I waffled on about it being the perfect everyday sports car, which I believe it is. Mainly because it's very easy to live with, but it's also fun to drive when you want to be a bit of a hooligan. Whereas the GT86 is much more driver focused, much more fun to drive, but less easy to live with on a daily basis. So I think the GT86 would make a very good second car, one that you can take out on a weekend and have some fun with. But if it's your only car, there will be some compromises to be made. So now I've driven this car at length, I do see what all the fuss was about. It's a superb little sports car. And also, if you're middle-aged, you can buy one and it won't look like you're going through some sort of crisis. You can't say that about an MX-5, can you? The way this car handles flatters even the most incompetent of drivers, like me. If you just drive it around town and keep the revs under 2000 RPM, it's basically a Corolla with a firm suspension. But on a day like today, on roads like this, it's perfect. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. If you've got any comments, if they're polite and nice, leave them below. If not, keep them to yourself. So I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.